Sir Kenneth, we can play the videos po.
Thank you.
National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines. The National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines, established by virtue of Presidential Decree 1003-8, signed on December 16, 1976, has been the symbol of the nation's commitment to science. Membership to the Academy is by peer recognition. Academician, resident Filipino scientists and engineers who have made exemplary contributions to the country through science and technology may be nominated and elected as academicians by members of the Academy. Corresponding member. Corresponding membership is conferred on non-resident Filipino scientists who have made exemplary contributions to the advancement of science and technology in the country and must have continuing connections and contributions to Philippine science. National Scientist. The Order of National Scientist is conferred by the President of the Republic of the Philippines and is the highest honor given to a Filipino man or woman of science. National Scientists are nominated from the members of the Academy.
Since 1978, 161 Filipino scientists have been elected to the Academy. As of 2024, the President of the Philippines has conferred the rank and title of National Scientist on 43 Filipinos, 11 of whom are still living. 67% of our NAST members are from NCR, 29% from Calabar Zone, and 1% each from Regions 3, 6, 7, and 10.
The Academy is composed of 6 divisions: Agricultural Sciences, Biological Sciences, Engineering Sciences and Technology, Health Sciences, Mathematical and Physical Sciences, and Social Sciences. NAST Philippines has 4 main functions: recognition, advisory, international linkages with other academies of science, management of the Philippines Science Heritage Center. The recognition function. The Academy recognizes and provides incentives to Filipino scientists and engineers for outstanding achievements in scientific and technological research and development. NAST Philippines fosters excellence in science and technology in the country through the recognition function. The primary mandate of the Academy is to recognize Filipino scientists and technologists who advance the state of Philippine science and technology. NAST also confers awards of outstanding publications in local journals, outstanding books or monographs, outstanding young scientist award for nominees under 40 years old, talent search award for nominees under 35 years old, and environmental science award.
Since 1980, 398 Filipinos have been recognized as outstanding young scientists. NAST has awarded the NAST Talent Search for Young Scientists to 132 young individuals since 1991. 223 scientific articles have been awarded as Outstanding Scientific Paper since 1993. 129 publications have been awarded as Outstanding Book and/or Monographs since 1994. 32 environmental scientists have received the NAST Environmental Science Awards since 2001. 6 individuals have received the NAST Awards for Outstanding Scientific Research in Tropical Medicine since 2005. 2 scientists have received the NAST Geminiano de Ocampo Visionary Awards for Medical Research since 2017.
Among the activities under the recognition function are NAST Lecture Series, NAST Symposium for the Youth, Research Upgrading and Performance Evaluation.
Since 2012, NAST Philippines have been conducting 6 to 7 research upgrading and performance evaluation sessions annually, enabling researchers to implement projects and publish scientific papers in international journals.
The second one is the advisory function. The Academy plays an important role as advisor to the President and the Cabinet on matters related to the role of science and technology in national development.
Through its advisory activities, NAST has been able to bring science and technology closer to the lives of the Filipino people. Our annual scientific meeting and regional scientific meeting in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao bring together experts to address critical issues and guide national development.
Other activities under the advisory function include science legislative and information fora and roundtable discussions. Speakers Bureau is a program which aims to bring experts in various fields to various institutions, such as academic institutions, who need speakers or resource persons on science and technology-related issues. NAST's commitment to international and national linkages are aimed at promoting collaborative efforts among Filipino scientists and between Filipino and foreign academies of science and promoting scientific cooperation.
NAST promotes global collaboration, connecting Filipino scientists with international peers to advance shared scientific goals. As of 2024, NAST Philippines has 16 bilateral agreements with 8 scientific academies and societies and is affiliated with 4 international scientific organizations.
Republic Act 9107 mandates NAST to manage, operate, and maintain the Philippine Science Heritage Center or PSHC. PSHC was created to be the country's main repository of the contributions, achievements, and accomplishments of Filipino scientists and technologists.
The activities under the Philippine Science Heritage Centers are Salin Lahi Symposium Series and Meet Your Scientists. Since 2010, 70,000 participants have joined the physical and virtual activities of PSHC, including the Salin Lahi Evolution Application Development Workshop and Contest. And in 2019, the center opened a hologram exhibit of living national scientists.
The NAST Philippines also manages the scientific career system under the Civil Service Commission, a system of recruitment, career progression, recognition, reward, and attraction of scientists and technologists in the public service.
NAST Philippines also provides technical and administrative support to the scientific career system under the Civil Service Commissions, providing a structured path for scientists and technologies in public service. As of 2024, there are 69 active and 114 retired career scientists. SES has 5 ranks based on scientific productivity, with 53 scientists at rank 1, 10 at rank 2, 2 at rank 3, 3 at rank 4, and 1 at rank 5.
NAST Philippines spearheaded the development of PAGTANAW 2050, the country's first foresight on science, technology, and innovation. PAGTANAW 2050 was initiated by former Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña and commissioned by DOST.
PAGTANAW 2050, meaning looking ahead, is the first interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary project on Philippine-focused science, technology, and innovation foresight and strategic plan. This initiative, launched by former DOST Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, serves as a planning device for achieving concrete goals and long-term strategies, leveraging our archipelagic and maritime resources to achieve inclusive growth, sustainability, and competitiveness in science, technology, and innovation.
NAST Philippines and DOST hope that PAGTANAW 2050 will guide the development of science, technology, and innovation in the Philippines towards a progressive archipelagic and maritime nation by 2050. NAST Philippines envisions an academy of recognized experts and serves as principal advisor to the nation on science, technology, and innovation, contributing to national development.
Together, let's work hand in hand towards a progressive Philippines anchored in science.
Magandang umaga po sa lahat. To formally start this program, may we invite everyone to pay attention now to your screen for the singing of the national anthem and to remain in silence for the invocation.
God of all faiths, give us strength, wisdom, and fortitude to overcome all the challenges that confront us. God of all faiths, sustain us as we live each day in hope and peace, trusting in your goodness and everlasting love. God of all faiths, guide us as we care for Mother Earth and all our people for generations to come. God of all faiths, grant all this, together with all the hopes and aspirations of our people, our country, and the whole world. All this we pray. Amen.
Isang mapagpalayang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good morning and welcome to the PAASE's Foresight Chat Series with the focus on PAGTANAW 2050, the Philippine Foresight on Science, Technology, Innovation document. My name is Maria Carmen Lagman,
And I am Deo Florence Onda.
and we
And
will
we
be
will be
your
your moderators.
this morning.
Yay.
So this it will be part of a four-part series organized by the Philippine Academy for Philippine American Academy for Science and Engineering in partnership with the National Academy of Science and Technology, NAST Philippines, as part of the initiative to improve, strengthen, evaluate PAGTANAW 2050. So the Philippine S&T Foresight document ensuring that it is aligned to the emerging trends, challenges, and advancement in S&T in the country. That's very exciting. And the world, and all while staying true to our aspirations to become a prosperous archipelago maritime nation. So good
So,
morning, Deo.
magandang umaga, Ma'am Menchi. So, in line with this goal, the session one aims to examine and evaluate each section of the foresight document. So, in this session, the speakers will be giving us a brief overview of the following sections of PAGTANAW 2050. Section 1, the making of the 30-year science, technology, innovations foresight, and a strategic plan. Section 2, mega trends from COVID 2019 to space and beyond. And Section 3, setting sights on the future, Philippine goals and aspirations. To officially welcome us for today's event, may we call on the Vice President of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, Dr. Maria Margaret Peña.
Thank you very much to our moderators. Good evening, good morning, magandang umaga sa Pilipinas, and good evening to those who are here in the United States. So on behalf of the organizers, I would like to warmly welcome you all to the first of the special of 4 fireside chats on PAGTANAW 2050, which she has mentioned, the Philippine Foresight on Science, Technology, and Innovation. So this series is brought to you by the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE, in partnership with the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines, or NAST Philippines. So as already mentioned, PAGTANAW 2050 is the first national level foresight and strategic plan on science, technology, and innovation for the Philippines. It was first drafted in 2021 by NAST Philippines, together with Filipino scientists, experts, and partner institutions, with the support of the DOST, or Department of Science and Technology, and was actually initiated by Dr. De La Peña. The document lays out a 30-year vision looking towards the year 2050 to anticipate future megatrends, identify opportunities and disruptions, and provide a long-term strategy for leveraging science, technology, and innovation to achieve a sustainable, inclusive, and globally competitive Philippines. So our goal with this fireside chat, as we had already mentioned, is twofold. First, to review and reflect on the key sections of the PAGTANAW 2050 document and contribute to its external review. Secondly, to engage the wider Filipino scientific, academic, and policy communities, both local and global, in a forward-looking dialogue where we can exchange insights, raise critical questions, and enrich the foresight with diverse perspectives. Through this series, we hope to bridge disciplines, deepen foresight, and strengthen our collective commitment to shaping a science-driven and future-ready Philippines. So the fireside chats are designed to be engaging, reflective, and collaborative. Each session, as already mentioned, will begin with a keynote presentation from a distinguished speaker, and this will be followed by reactions from expert discussants and then an open dialogue with all of the participants. The format encourages not just listening, but active exchange, a way to co-create insights that are both equally academically rigorous, but also practically relevant. And so, as mentioned, we have 4 fireside chats. This is the first. The second one will be on September 4th, followed by September 12th, and then the last one will be on September 19th. So this morning, we are honored to be joined by our guest speaker, Academician Rhodora Azanza. We're also privileged to have with us distinguished reactors, PAASE members, and experts in their respective fields. Dr. Richard Abendan for Science and Technology Indicators on Competitive and Innovation, Dr. Gisela Concepcion from the Philippine Innovation System, and PAASE members Dr. J. Vim Evaristo and Dr. Daniel Ibarra, who are experts in geographic features and natural resource endowments. Their insights will not only help sharpen the PAGTANAW 2050 documents, but also inspire us to think boldly about the role of science and technology in national development. So with that, let's begin our conversation. Thank you for joining us this Friday, and may today's exchange bring us closer to a shared vision for the Philippines in 2050. Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Marge, and for the charge to think boldly, to be reflective of what we're going to be hearing today. So, to provide us an overview of the first three, sections of PAGTANAW is Professor Emeritus Dr. Rhodora Azanza. She is a very good friend and has been involved with NAST-Phil maybe as a president in the past. So Dr. Azanza is a member of the NAST-Phil Division on Biological Sciences with an expertise in botany. And she has contributed amazingly into the discussion on paralytic shellfish poisoning in the Philippines. So Ma'am Rod, we're excited to hear about this whole document, to listen reflectively and contribute. Let's give her a warm virtual welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone, and good morning. Magandang umaga. On behalf of the National Academy of Science and Technology, it is my honor and pleasure to present to you the first 3 sections of PAGTANAW 2050. As mentioned by our Vice President of PAASE, this was prepared during my presidency, actually, from 2020 to 2021. And we disseminated the first issue in 2021, the end of 2021. So I need not, I think, define what a foresight is, but I would like to emphasize that this is participatory. It's a future intelligence cooperation by experts and other stakeholders. And we consider key agents of change. And usually the foresight is developed together with strategic visions and anticipatory intelligence. The goal, as mentioned by the Vice President of PAASE, is to have Philippine sustainable development and resilience anchored on science. The objectives were also mentioned by our Vice President of PAASE, and these are to develop the Philippines' scientific capital in the years leading to 2050, to chart strategic science, technology, and innovation pathways, and to exercise vigilance on cooperative action plans. Just like any other foresight, the foresight is now in the process of review and enhancement, and we will be coming up with the latest edition in 2026. So there are 7 sections of PAGTANAW 2050, and I will be giving you the highlights of sections 1 to 3. And Deo has already, Dr. Deo Onda has already given you the titles of the 3 sections, and I don't need to repeat them because they will be considered in the discussions later on. The document is about 360 pages and with 550 references. And we have several technologies listed in the appendix and mentioned several times in the different sections. The flow of a presentation would be following the different sections, but I'd like to mention that I cannot cover the entire thing almost. Like, for example, pollution, which needs more discussion. And I really did not cover the SDGs, but we can cover this if you like during the discussions. So the making of PAGTANAW in section 1 will be covered, the highlights, the mega trends that we considered, the highlights, the more important ones, and the setting sights on the future, which actually gave rise to the, guided the strategic pathways that we recommended. Allow me first to give thanks and acknowledge the staff and the people who helped us in the development of PAGTANAW 2050. As mentioned, Secretary De La Peña challenged NAST during the early presidency, my presidency, in 2019, and we started the project in 2020. And so it is a commissioned project under DOST, and now Secretary Soludium is helping us in the review and for the second edition of PAGTANAW 2050. And likewise, Secretary Soludium participated in the preparation of edition 1 of PAGTANAW. The steering committee chaired by Academician Padulina was mostly composed of DOST secretaries and national scientists. I would like to thank the section writers whom we tapped from the Academy, from the OYS, and from other academic institutions from here and abroad. All the 335 participants and more in the various meetings, surveys, and workshops in that 1 year of work for PAGTANAW 2050, the artists for the digital work, the editorial team and the steering committee again, the project support staff, the NAST secretariat, especially the executive director, Lunigning Samarino, for the administrative support. Well, early in the preparation of PAGTANAW 2050, we reviewed more than 10 foresights of other countries. And this is what we call forensics in the foresight. Japan, we chose to consider 3 countries in the document in that chapter. So, like, for example, Japan listed about 312 technologies of high importance and narrowed it to a list of about less than the 312, 10% of that 312. And then may I mention that Japan has this foresight, plan for science, technology, and innovation since 1971. And then they have the Science and Technology Foresight Center, and they review the foresight every 5 years, just like what we are doing now. Korea identified 287 technologies, and they would like to foresee that being used until 2040 and updated also regularly. They have short-term to medium, and long-term plans. And they have a legislation, and they call it the Framework Act on Science and Technology, and Article 13 and Article 22 specifically covers the enforcement of the framework. Malaysia, with whom the country with whom we were closely interacting during that period, in fact, we were able to come up with the ASEAN foresight. We'd be directly involved in that foresight for the ASEAN, identified 95 technologies, and finally narrowed to 25 in the 2020 issue that they published. The foresight is reviewed regularly by the Malaysian Academy of Science and Technology. Okay, so the ASEAN Foresight Initiative was done from 20 to 22, but it was disseminated in 2024. The writing was really rigorous from 2023 to 2024. The next slide. So I will not use the lower part of this slide, but I'd like to mention briefly that in the framework of PAGTANAW, we consider the inputs and the outputs, and the inputs would come from scientific technology and innovation of the country and the rest of the world. And we considered STEM education and retention of improvement of STEM in the country as a very important output, and would also be considering inputs and outputs from the framework. And we considered key operational areas, and I'd like to mention the key operational areas later on in another slide. And actually, we decided a little bit later in the discussions that we need to consider the goal of having a prosperous archipelagic maritime nation for the foresight by virtue of what we have and what we need to develop. So the methods that we use, we included forensics, bibliometrics, review of foresights of other countries. We did SWOT, we did the Delphi, and we did the scenario planning, considering risk, uncertainties, and different opportunities. The next slide. So as an introduction also to, and also to really to put in the context the PAGTANAW, we need to consider that the population by 2050 would be about 144 million Filipinos, and there are old and new challenges. One would be poverty alleviation. The pandemic could happen anytime, just what we did having experienced early on in the start of the preparation of PAGTANAW 2050. Climate change is affecting us socio-economically and everything. And the fourth industrial revolution inputting opportunities, risk, and other effects. So we have national and regional politics considered quite, not so extensively, but considered in a section authored by Bahar Mangahas and Secretary Balisacan. So the approach in PAGTANAW 2050, as mentioned, is interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, in fact, and transdisciplinary to address these complex, interrelated, and really urgent concerns. So may I mention that in foresight, this foresight in science and technology, the preferred future or the plausible future is considered, but then we accommodate lead time and diversity, and we highlight emerging opportunities and threats. We included backcasting, and may I remind you that we have this futures triangle. We considered weight of the past and the push of the present, but more importantly, the pull of the future. And in the pull of the future, we all have to always remember that the weight of the past and the push of the present, we should not really strengthen or deeply pull down the pull of the future. So we had a very close review of the aspirations of the Filipino people, and this is very important for the socioeconomic aspects and even other in developmental, environmental aspects of development. So these are the Constitution, the PDP plans, the RA 8425 defining our minimum basic needs, the DOST National Research and Development Agenda, and even the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, let me mention Ambition Natin 2040, which was a project of NEDA, and there were about 4,000 respondents, and you can see from the graph during that time, the Filipinos really had a very low concern, or they do not mind that much science and technology, not really thinking that science and technology can really help them in these various aspirations that they have put as numbers 1, 2, 3, and more. Okay, so let's, if we want to consider that later, we can do that. So in the review of the documents available to us, there is one obvious lesson, and this was echoed by Farrar. You cannot just build, and well, we know this for sure, all of us. We cannot just build science and even technology that we need during the time that we need it. We need them, or yeah. The investment in people, teams, and infrastructure over the years can provide the bedrock that is so important in a crisis, just like, for example, COVID-19. So during that period, we had the available data presented in the document, and the Philippines ranks very low compared to the other documents that we have reviewed. Like, we only have about 188 researchers per million population, but according to Yusek Guevara during the time, it was about 360 people per million of Filipinos. That was in 2021. The percentage of graduates from STEM programs in tertiary education data in 2016 was again very low, but not that low compared to Vietnam and Thailand. But of course, Singapore and the Republic of Korea would have the higher percentage of STEM program graduates in the tertiary education. Next slide. Okay, so here we emphasize that talent, not capital, will be the key factor linking innovation, competitiveness, and growth in the 21st century. And this was pointed out by the Human Capital Report in 2050. And so therefore, we must understand better the global talent value chain, especially the Philippine talent value chain. Now, we have here in this slide the regional distribution of higher education faculty with doctoral degrees across academic years up to 2018. This was from the CHED database, but actually reviewed by UPLB. And we have the greatest concentration, of course, at the National Capital Region, and the lowest would be, of course, in the BARM and other areas, regions in Mindanao. The next slide. And then the concentration of state universities and colleges would be, of course, again, in the National Capital Region and Northern Mindanao, and the other Mindanao regions, again, would have the lowest concentrations of state universities and colleges. The next slide. Now, if we consider world university rankings, but I think this will be discussed by one of our reactors, like, for example, in QS and WUR, if you consider the Philippines, there are about 4 Philippine HEIs that have ranked since 2010 up to 2020, but recently there are more. I think 10 HEIs are now ranked by QS and WR. They are alphabetically listing these 4: Ateneo de Manila, De La Salle University, UP System, UST, and the only state-supported university is UP during that time. But I think during this period, there are more state-supported HEIs in the rankings. Generally, the criteria for ranking are 30% learning environment, the number of PhDs in the faculty, the student-to-teacher ratio, and many others. So the 30% on research, like the volume of research outputs, the reputation of the institutions in terms of the research outputs, like citations, the 7.5% on the international outlook, meaning the number of international faculty and international students, and about 2.5% on industry relations, considering income coming from the industry, meaning support financially from the industry, and technology transfer coming from the HEIs to the industry. So the Philippine HEIs need to recognize the need for consistent and cohesive admission, retention, and graduation policies for undergraduate and undergraduate programs, especially for the STEM. Our HEI should commit to establishing common standards of excellence and start by having harmonized systems. I think CHED has been doing this, and there are panels for excellence in the STEM, many of us have been participating since maybe the early 200s. This should be continued, of course. No? The search, the attainment of excellence in the harmonized systems. These program policies and guidelines will set forth minimum requirements for enhanced research, teaching, and in case if it's a public HEIs for extension and public service. Now, this is a picture of how we stand in terms of, I think I have mentioned this a while ago, but compared again to Singapore and Malaysia, we are quite low in the number of PhDs in STEM per million of the Filipinos. In a review that was done by NAST, and I also did the recent review for marine science, most of the PhDs in local HEIs in marine, in STEM are not actually into the science field, but in education. I'm not education field, education for science. The next slide. So it has been, well, in the document, there's a section for competitiveness in the innovation system, but this is considered, competitiveness is considered in almost all the chapters of PAGTANAW. And let me mention here that during the time of the review, in the GEF, the GCI of the Philippines, based on the World Economic Forum reports, considering productivity, growth, and human development, in comparison to the ASEAN countries, the Philippines were generally around 5th compared to Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Thailand, and Indonesia, which are usually in the upper ranks. The country had lower scores in health and primary education, infrastructure, and technological readiness, and seemed to have performed well in market size, labor market efficiency, and business sophistication. In terms of STEM education and retention, there have been many projects that have been undertaken not only by DOST, but also by CHED in 1992 to 98. There was this SF project implemented up to I think 2013. And the STEM was considered in the 4 tracks of the K-12. And there was the Science and Technology Scholarship Act, which expanded up to scholarships for the undergraduate degrees, for the master's and doctoral degrees in STEM. This was met by the ERDT and the ASTROP. And then there were reports of graduations from these two programs. And I think we need to have more graduates from these programs. And of course, the scientific career system created by Presidential Decree 997 help in the retention of our STEM personnel. This is the Magna Carta for scientists, engineers, and researchers and other S&T personnel. And NAST has been managing this, and there was a report by our executive director on this early in the program. And of course, the Balik Scientist Act of the DOST and even UP are helping in this STEM education and retention. Most of them, like DEO, has been retained as a faculty of UP. The next slide. So there's a very nice, I think this is a very nice chapter in the PAGTANAW, authored primarily by Academician mga Has and Balisacan. Almost half of the population, and also there were a lot of inputs by Academician Padolina. Almost half of the population nowadays, it's meaning from 2021 up to the present, I think, almost half of the population are in the age group 0 to 24, and these are the potential source of talent pool for science, technology, and innovation. Access to formal education and skills training, which are crucial factor to develop and maintain the critical mass of skilled workers, and ST&I activities, especially in R&D and other services, would come from this age group. By 2045, and this was pointed out, I think, by Abrigo, only a third of the population in this age bracket will be realized. So therefore, there will be a slight decrease. And so therefore, measures should be instituted to manage this decrease. The differences in the demographics of the region. So there would be some differences in the population of these people across the country. And they require targeted STI interventions calibrated to the characteristics and needs of the regions, especially for livelihood, education, and health services. Again, the NCR had the lowest first quarter poverty incidence for both years, and the ARM had the highest poverty incidence, well, almost all throughout the years. The next slide. So there's a section on innovation. Filipino innovation was mentioned. The HRDI of the OSC from 2017 to 2022 priority areas were considered. And there is a framework to improve science, technology, and innovation outputs. The DOST review this regularly. I think the most recent was done by Secretary Saludium. And the framework involves not only, would consider not only the OSC, but the other agencies involved in science and technology. So the whole of government approach to inclusive innovation would consist of coherent policies, aligned priorities, collaboration among government agencies, academic institution, industry, and civil society organizations. Very recently, of course, the Philippine Innovation Council was convened by President Marcos, and I think somebody from the reactors would be mentioning this, and this is the one which is now functioning quite closely and actively in this Filipino innovation. So what is important here is the integration of efforts of the stakeholders, meaning the LGUs, considering the startups, considering S&T parks, the other incubators, fabrication laboratories, and investors. I'd like to mention also that in PAGTANAW 2050, the project Science for Change was given emphasis, and these are the NICER, R&D lead, Cradle and Beast, and these are very much, these projects are very much involved in the development of the different sectors of the scientific and technological community of the country. The next slide. The next. Now, let's go to the physical attributes of the country. In my presentations of PAGTANAW in other sectors, I always start with this, but I am following the section presentations in PAGTANAW 2050. The reason why we had this goal, which is prosperous and sustainable archipelagic and maritime Philippines by 2050, is the fact that in terms of physical attributes, we have more water than land. It's about 70% water that we have and only about 20 to 30% of land. And we need to consider also that we have the Philippine rice, and we are at the center of marine biodiversity. The next slide. So this graph would show the water that is available to the Philippines to harness for our blue economy development, that can help the general economy of the Philippines, the territorial waters and the waters given to us by virtue of UNCLOS exclusive economic zone, or the EEZ. Now, this is from BIFAR, and this would show you graphically how much we have in terms of the coastal and marine resources. The mainland is only about 20 to 30%. The municipal waters, the territorial waters, and the EEZ, which we can harness for the blue economy, is quite vast. And also, there is now movement globally that we can have our share in the sustainable development and utilization of the high seas. The next slide. Now we have this paper earlier published in 2017, and we approximated, thank you to EDNACO for having this published in the UP National Publication Journal. And we estimated the amount of marine resources, the biological especially resources that we have in our mangroves, seagrasses, and coral reefs. In that particular paper, we recommended the management and the regular valuation of our marine, coastal, and marine resources. Please take note that, can we go back? Please take note that many of our provinces are coastal, and even our cities and municipalities, and many of our population are coastal. Our population mostly are residing in the coastal areas. The next slide. Well, we are also endowed with productive terrestrial resources. Our forest, of the declared 15.8 million hectares of forest lands, only 7.1 million are covered with, unfortunately, with forest. The others classified as closed forest. 40% of these are continuously covered by trees. The open forests are not continuously covered by trees, but it is about 10 to 40%. And only 4% of this 15.8 million hectares of forest lands are mangroves. So there is a need for a lot of reforestations for all of these forest lands up to the mangrove forest. Biodiversity, even in the terrestrial areas, is to be noted. We are one of the world's 18 mega biodiverse countries, considering not only considering the terrestrial biodiversity. We are fifth in the number of plant species. Endemism is quite high, and even in wildlife, terrestrial wildlife, especially in bird endemism. Our agricultural lands are estimated at 14.48, estimated by the Philippine Statistics Authority in 2019. So there could be a little difference now, maybe a little lower or higher. We are updating our data in the review of updating of PAGTANAW 2050 for release in 2026. The major agricultural crops would be, of course, rice, corn, coconut, sugarcane, and banana. And the major livestock are carabao, goat, hog, and poultry. And I know for a fact that we are importing, based on PSA data and other reports, we are importing a number of these materials. Okay, the next slide. In terms of mineral resources, many of these are quite classified. The Philippines ranks fifth among the world's most mineralized countries. I think Iran and Russia is the second in terms of the more mineralized countries. With 9 million hectares of land that have high mineral content, well, of course, our marine environment is also rich with minerals and even other elements. And we are sitting on high the bed of mineral resources, meaning the country. The major metallic minerals include gold, nickel, chromite, and copper. And the country has concessions in infrastructure for 8 operating sites for gold, limestone, marble, and 30 operating mines for nickel and chromite. That cover. The next slide. With the country is archipelagic, and this has been emphasized and needs to be emphasized in all documents for education and many more about the Philippines. We are the third most vulnerable country to natural disasters, considering climate change impacts, earthquakes, and many more, due to our location, our geology, and our high population density. And as I have mentioned, many of whom are coastal. Majority of our population hence faced severe risks from anthropogenic factors and natural hazards like sea level rise, land subsidence. Well, let me mention floods, strong storms and heavy rainfalls. The next slide. So the last two, I think I am now on the last two section of what I need to consider. The mega trend, we have a section on navigating the new globalization, the Philippine perspective. The mega trend sweeping the world is the era of digital globalization. Automation, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things, and other technological advances are reshaping economies, creating disruptions, and spurring innovations even in social and political spheres. PAGTANAW 2050 emphasizes the strategic pathways from COVID-19 up to about 2050. And we have some pathways or maps that we showed in the document. We need to consider the impact on learning and the STEM, of course, of this globalization. And we need to consider the deepening inequality, the deepening digital divide in the country. And we need to consider poor governance and weak institutions, not only in victim in many areas. No, I'm not saying it's CHED or whatever, or DOST. Generally, there is poor governance because of lack of manpower and, well, of course, sometimes really poor governance. And we have weak institutions, this was pointed out by the EDCOM. And of course, climate change basically impacting, like, for example, food security. The next slide. The science, technology, and innovation, as emphasized all throughout the PAGTANAW 2050, is an economic enabler. STI can open up economic opportunities for the rapidly growing population, especially our labor force, improve mobility and human capital, especially for the less well-off families, if well managed, and mitigate and prevent the adverse effects of climate change. We need to advance institutions and improve governance towards shared prosperity. And this was named by Mangas and Balisacan in Section 3 as inclusive prosperity, meaning equal access to the most basic services that will allow people to work toward their own betterment, such as knowledge or education, health or long life, and the ability to compete for opportunities with others on equal footing, regardless of their social and economic backgrounds. So we emphasize not only in this section, but in all the other sections, that SAI can be an effective enabler of the economy and the society. And we need to mainstream the STI effectively in the nation's vision, plans, and policy implementation for long-term growth and development. So we mapped the ST&I ingredients for the coming from the policy foresight into the strategic plans that we recommended. And we emphasize that the government needs to increase and protect investments in human capital by building a more crisis-resilient healthcare system and food security schemes. STEM education should be strengthened, particularly in vulnerable areas, to include special programs to combat disinformation. The government and private sector should be agile and innovative in creating new livelihood opportunities, which are science-based, and disruptive opportunities considered to start as disruptive opportunities, which could be positive or negative, start to operate. The barriers in technology adoption among business and the rest of the population should be addressed by flexible and adaptable policies. Underpinning the technologies and the strategies given in the foresight, which are to be reviewed, would need strong institutions and good governance, given the double-edged nature of most technologies. So we came up with STI roadmap or pathways to guide national development toward our preferred future or the plausible future. This unified and integrated map can be broken down into 4 complementary submaps, one for each of the previously mentioned technology, actually not only one, but a set of technology clusters per submaps that usually visually trace the foresighted trajectories of the enablers, drivers, and opportunities that are seen to shape the Philippine STI and the rest of the country for the next 3 decades. So these are the key operational areas. We considered 12 of them, but actually 5 have been considered as overarching. This is blue economy, governance, business and trade, digital technology, and science education, and talent. There were 4 clusters that we determined: food, nutrition, and health. This is to be able to consider the overarching influencers and enablers in the related KOAs. These are food. The first cluster is food, nutrition, and health. The second cluster is food and energy. The next cluster is environment and space exploration. The other one is built environment. These are all the infrastructures from the roads to dams and all the other built housing, etc. And the vision, as I have stated, based on what we have and what we need to develop, the endowments and the aspirations is to have an inclusive, prosperous, sustainable, and resilient maritime archipelagic country. The next. So this is really complicated if you would look at it firsthand. But in the discussion in the different sections, you would know why there is no period of time considered in the roadmap, because each of the period can be attained based on the cluster achievements or activities. Like, for example, for the environment and climate change, the first section the first stage should be management of the health and other disasters, even related to physical and other human affecting disasters. The second stage is risk prepared and productive systems. The second stage is the consideration of the highlands to ocean effective ecosystem management. And the last stage of an ideal stage by or before 2050 is the agile and competitive circular economy. So I will not discuss this in detail. And basically, the stages would be from revived economy to high growth development into a competitive economy for the preferred future of one archipelagic maritime nation. So we have disseminated version 1 of this PAGTANAW 2050 in 17 geographical regions. We had focus group discussions in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. RSMs and RDICs have been developed resolutions using PAGTANAW 2050 as a basis for the strategic planning. And in our discussions with them, we discussed specific niches in the R&D and the areas for national collaboration, meaning specific to the region, and then areas for national collaboration. The next slide. So PAGTANAW 2050 is phase 2 is being started. We requested PAASE for this active review of PAGTANAW, and we will have also international benchmarking. Of course, we were engaged in the ASEAN regional foresighting, and then also we'll have benchmarking with other countries, like, for example, Australia. The phase 2 would aim for the institutionalization of PAGTANAW, specifically with the OST. We are continuously engaging with the government and the rest of the society. In fact, in my case, I have been involved in the presentation of PAGTANAW with the Department of Foreign Affairs and other departments of the government and other high HEIs. We want to have more champions for the continuity of PAGTANAW, and we will be considering potential legislation of PAGTANAW 2050. We have given copies of PAGTANAW 2050 to the Senate and Congress. We need to have more discussions with them. And of course, the continuous stakeholders engagement. We have 4 aspects of the project, and we have how do you call this? The non-scientific part of the population to be engaged in this dissemination and education on PAGTANAW 2050. 2050 is being translated to Filipino. The executive summary has been translated, and we are now translating the first 3 sections of PAGTANAW with the help of the National Commission on the Filipino language. And we would like to emphasize that PAGTANAW 2050 is a living document to be monitored, to be enhanced, and to be reframed, just like in other foresight of other countries, if there's a need to reframe the PAGTANAW 2050. The next slide. So in closing, I think I have really used my time quite efficiently. PAGTANAW 2050 aims to really harness the talent and tools in science and technology, especially of the Filipinos, to innovate towards a prosperous archipelagic maritime nation on or before 2050. Thank you, and maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Academician Azanza. Thank you for that very enlightening and insightful presentation. And Ma'am Rod, thank you for reminding us of the journey that NAST and you and the other contributors needed to go through to actually come up with this very important document, considering the weight of the past, push of the present, and the pull of the future. And also for reminding us of the importance of revisiting that identity of Filipinos as a maritime archipelagic nation. By the way po, sa lahat, no, next month, September, is the Maritime and Archipelagic Nation Awareness Month or MANAMO. So, I think hindi naman na tayo masyadong malayo. So, happy MANAMO to everyone. So, as we move on and to further provide
Thank you.
insights to our dialogue, thank you, Ma'am Rod. We would like to call on our reactors, highly esteemed experts in their respective fields, to share their insights, comments, and additional input regarding the presentation made by Dr. Azanza. Each reactor will be given 10 minutes only to share their sentiments and thoughts on the section or subsections discussed.
Leo, we have a very amazing person as our first reactor. He's a lawyer, well-versed in corporate law and compliance and issues related to climate change and public-private relationships, and even governance and policy. So today we have the Deputy Executive Director of the Climate Change Office of the Climate Change Commission. So please welcome Attorney Romel Antonio Cuenca.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. And thank you very much for the kind introduction. On behalf of our Vice Chairperson and Executive Director, Robert E. Borge, and the Climate Change Commission, we'd like to express our gratitude to the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, as well as the National Academy of Science and Technology for allowing us to be not only be part of this conversation this morning, but also to weigh in on what we consider to be a very important document, no, going forward. And we therefore, if I may say, the Climate Change Commission affirms its appreciation and support for the PAGTANAW 2050 as among and as one of the more important and aspirational documents leading towards a progressive Philippines. I'm going to stay on my lane and focus primarily on section 2.2 and the 3 subtopics of air pollution, land, state, and subglobal terrestrial natural resources, and the 3rd subtopic of global status and trends on coastal marine resources, as it all relates to climate change and the government's efforts towards fighting its effects and adapting to its effects as well, and trying to mitigate the dangers arising from climate change. So, from the viewpoint of the Climate Change Commission, PAGTANAW 2050 embodies the importance of crafting a strategic plan that is anchored on science, so that we can chart our path to progress and development. The Climate Change Commission also recognizes the integration, and just like in the PDP, for the first time, there's an actual chapter dedicated to climate change. Here, there's a specific section of the document, climate change and exploitation of natural resources, pollution, global warming, and increase in extreme weather events. And this we see as another opportunity for collaboration and partnership on the implementation of our recently crafted National Adaptation Plan 2023 to 2050, and our nationally determined contribution and its implementation plan, NDCIP 2020 to 2030. We are, of course, aiming to update or come up with a version, the second iteration of our NDC, and we will try to improve on our numbers this year before we go to the Conference of Parties in November. So at the outset, the CCC notes and acknowledges the similarities and alignments of aspects of Section 2.2 of PAGTANAW 2020, of the PAGTANAW 2020, PAGTANAW, with our National Adaptation Plan and their nationally determined contribution. For instance, on the subtopic regarding air pollution, it discusses the effects of the emissions brought about by the continuous urbanization of the environment, the impacts of climate change to rainfall and extreme weather events that we experience as well. Further, the document also makes a brief emphasis on the importance of adaptation measures to climate hazards and the key government agencies and departments charged with the mandate of addressing these impacts of climate change. On the other hand, the National Adaptation Plan, as a foundational document, and I'm now juxtaposing both PAGTANAW and the NAP here. The NAP, as a foundational document, outlines the Philippines' roadmap to climate resilience with fit-for-purpose interventions determined through comprehensive science and evidence-based and beyond business-as-usual planning tools. All this taking into consideration projected risks and scenarios from top-of-class modeling technologies for up to 2050 and beyond. The NAP has concentrated on 4 climatic impact drivers, or CIDs, which are deemed most critical in the Philippines. These climatic impact drivers are, first, to increase temperatures and drought; second, sea level rise and extreme sea levels; third is extreme precipitation; and fourth, extreme wind and tropical cyclones. Now, for the NDC and its implementation plan, the NDC provides a highly ambitious commitment of the Philippines to a projected greenhouse gas emissions reduction and avoidance of 75% for 2020 to 20 for the period 2020 to 2030. Of the 75%, 2.71% is unconditional. That means using our own money, our own resources, our own financial resources, and 72.29 is conditional, and that means using the means of implementation to be provided by developed countries to support for technology development and transfer, capacity building, and climate finance. Now, the Philippines NDC was submitted to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, in 2021 to set out the roadmap and actions for implementing the Philippines NDC. The Nationally Determined Contribution Implementation Plan has been developed, and it builds on the country's existing laws, regulations, and plans, as well as existing sources of climate finance, considering considering the elaborated mitigation, adaptation, and sustainable development using a bottom-up approach. And this focuses on sector-level actions and needs. It outlines policies and measures, or PAMs, to reduce or avoid emissions in 5 sectors. These are agriculture, waste, industry, transport, and energy. Now, on the subtopic of land, state, and subglobal terrestrial natural resources, the PAGTANAW document has made an articulation on the importance of land as a principal resource where biodiversity, livelihoods, supply of food, fresh water, and other ecosystem services are dependent. Similarly, our NAP, to effectively build resilience and enhance adaptive capacity, identifies 8 key sectors as focal points for adaptation action. And these are: first, agriculture, fisheries, and food security; second, water resources; third, health; fourth, ecosystems and biodiversity; fifth, cultural heritage, population displacement and migration; sixth, land use and human settlements; seventh, livelihoods and industries; and eight, energy, transport, and communications. Now, these sectors are interconnected and require a coordinated approach to ensure that our adaptation efforts are comprehensive and effective. The NAP therefore serves as a critical framework for identifying and addressing the medium and long-term adaptation needs of the country, informed by the latest climate science. It outlines strategic actions to mitigate vulnerabilities, enhance adaptive capacities, and integrate climate adaptation into national, sectoral, and local development planning. There are 5 thematic cross-sector adaptation strategies identified, and these are: first, strengthen infrastructure resilience; second, safeguard livelihoods with social protection and regulations; third, empower local governments and communities to take adaptation action; fourth, mainstream integrated adaptation governance; and fifth, scale up nature-based solutions. Now, on the subtopic regarding global status and trends on coastal marine resources, the CCC views the PAGTANAW document as highlighting the role of our oceans in nurturing biodiversity, storing carbon, and aids in the stabilization of the climate. Moreover, this subtopic also made an emphasis on the role of the expansion of economic activities in the ocean, which contributes to the vulnerability of the coast and nearshore waters to land pollution. Examples of these may be agricultural runoff, chemicals because of fertilizers, macro and microplastic pollutants that feed into the ocean from river systems. Meanwhile, one of the adaptation priorities identified in the NAP, and that's the adaptation outcomes for ecosystems and biodiversity, provides the following priorities. First, there's 3. The first is ecosystems accounts developed and regularly updated to monitor and enhance regulating services for adaptation. Second, protected and rehabilitated biodiversity across habitats and ecosystems. And third, enabled and empowered communities to lead ecological management. Well, in closing, my 10 minutes is up. In closing, the Climate Change Commission conveys its commendation and appreciation to the National Academy of Science and Technology and the PAGTANAW 2050 for its support and its giving importance to the issue of climate change by including it among the identified clusters from the 6 operational areas for science, technology, and innovation. This will certainly help pave the way for a more comprehensive and science-based development of the adaptation and mitigation strategies towards a climate resilient and climate smart Philippines. Maraming salamat po and look forward to the rest of the discussions ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Cuenca, and thank you also for explaining to us how the PAGTANAW 2050 actually juxtaposes with the Philippines National Action Plan for a comprehensive roadmap to resilience, emphasizing the need for comprehensive data-driven and science-informed adaptation. So maraming salamat po. Now let's proceed to our next reactor. He serves as the RTI International Chief of Party for the Upskill Program, funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, Science, Technology, Research, and Innovation for Development, or STRIDE. Ladies and gentlemen, please all welcome Dr. Richard Abendan.
Thanks, Dave, for the introduction. Good morning, good evening, everybody. First, I'm not with the USAID project anymore. As you know, things have changed in USAID. So now I'm affiliated with business chambers and also working with private sector. So again, thanks for the invite and happy to be with you all here. In the interest of time, I won't really go do a deep dive on the indicator section. Many of you are already aware of all the discussions in the PAGTANAW document about the rankings. It looked at, say, the global competitiveness rank index. Back in the paper, it was in 2019, we were 64th. Now we're 51st. So there's an improvement, but still the areas we're weakest at, like infrastructure, technology readiness, basic education is still low. So the issues are still there, and we're all aware of that. I'd rather just do a deep dive now on like the Global Innovation Index, something that we've looked at closely in the PAGTANAW document, but also looking at sort of what's the future. If you're looking at how do we implement or get towards the goals of PAGTANAW, no? The GII as a ranking is being used. These indicators are being used by NEDA, now DepDev, in its National Innovation Agenda Strategy document. And so there's 20 indicators in the GII that's sort of mapped towards the indicators used by our government to look at indicators for innovation. And these are traditional indicators to some extent, right? We're familiar with things like number of scientists per billion population, expenditures in R&D. Dr. Azanza talked about these figures, and we always know there's always going to be room for improvement for that. What I want to sort of touch on is that these are classic indicators, and they're very important. I will be the first to say, right? We need more scientists. We need more investments in R&D. We need to increase our scientific output. We need that to become an innovative country we're looking at for in 30 years. But also there's this question about what are other alternative indicators we can look at to sort of diagnose our health and efforts in innovation. So I remember SecBoy approached the STRIDE program back then, this was probably almost 5-10 years ago. What are the alternative metrics of measuring our efforts on innovation? Because if we just look at classic metrics, we're not always going to be ranking high, right? We're not going to be spending as much as the other nations on R&D, for example. So some of the indicators we've looked at that I think I will say that even recently in USAID, we've worked with NEDA and DepDev on how to look at these alternative metrics on innovation. Things like what are the outcomes of investments in R&D? Do people actually utilize facilities? Maybe use that as an indicator. Look at infra, right? It's a very big piece. Like we need to spend more on infra, but our infra projects really completed? Are they being utilized? Can we measure that? So these are really sort of the outcome indicators that I think are the next generation indicators we should look at to see our efforts, if it's really paying off. Also changes, right? What's the percent growth in investments? Even though it's still small, I think that's also important to show that, hey, we're really putting money to where we want to put our efforts on. So just want to mention that alternative metrics that's coming up. Also, the PAGTANAW document in the indicator section talks about a policy recommendation. It's sort of a grand statement saying, ultimately, let's keep innovation as a center of government policy for development. Yes, but it's easier said than done, right? Because we know different agencies have their own performance metrics, deliverables, and mandates. So how do we make these metrics sort of harmonized, right? We're all working towards the same goal. And again, governments, we're going towards that direction, working with DOST, DTI, NEDA, looking at what indicators each agencies are doing, and maybe we can sort of try to now feed to them as a group, no, and talk about being whole of government. How do we say that? We should actually start to create our outputs towards these unified targets. So that's something that is coming down the line. We have worked with DepDev on that. How do we create these metrics that are unified across agencies? And I think we can, whoever here, we can help in that effort, please help. So harmonized metrics, alternative metrics, and maybe sort of to close off my comment, and I can hang out to do a longer discussion on this. In Pagtatanaw, we always talk about being bold. I heard that term a while ago. How do we make our interventions now permeate to everything we do? And in a way, indicators, though there are long-term indicators we could look at, they are also limiting, right? In a way, if you want to strive for indicators that are, you have to hit numbers for the next 2 or 3 years, does that prevent you from looking at long-term goals, right? If you want to be bold, if you want to be sort of provocative in terms of reaching these ambitious goals, we should also look at, maybe indicators are not only the best ways to look at our efforts, right? Maybe it will limit some of our approaches, right? We might think too short term. So, even we can do a deep dive indicators and we can keep doing that. Just something to keep in mind. Number one also is how do we permeate our work? I mean, from Dr. Azanza, she mentioned that, Korea, when they have these foresight ideas, they actually enforce it. And there's actually laws and policies around it. When do we start having sort of the efforts around here, the indicators we're doing seep into actual government interventions? How can it be unified? And ultimately, how can it still spur us to become more ambitious? So I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to discuss this further during our Q&A.
Thank you for that, sir. There's a lot of interesting questions that have been thrown in, and how do we really make our interventions permeate in everything that we do? And I think one of the key, takeaways from the discussion that you had is that maybe the indicators that we have right now really are not the best way to gauge the impacts of our efforts, and it's something that we need to discuss and to look into. In order to really assess the importance of this PAGTANAW 2050 and the initiatives that we will be implementing along with it. So maraming salamat dun, sir. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about this later. Thank you very much, sir. So moving forward, we will now be calling our next reactor. She was my former professor and also current member of the Biological Sciences Division of the National Academy of Science and Technology, and a professor emeritus of the UP Marine Science Institute. Please all welcome Dr. Gisela Concepcion. Ma'am, thank you.
Thank you, Deo. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you po.
Thank you. So I'm letting Fab switch my slides. Next slide, please. Okay, can you do it on the first slide first, Fab? And can you put it on full screen, please? Oh, okay. So you're doing the PDF. So many of you have heard this or a part of this talk. I'd like to say that I would like, as a member of the National Innovation Council, executive member nominated by the PAASE, I would like to point out that rather than have the entrepreneur at the center of innovation, I would propose that universities and R&D institutions, both public and private, serve as the major catalysts and central drivers of high-level, high-quality innovations in priority areas of national development, because this is where the discovery and innovation reside. And with innovation, we know it's not just new knowledge, it's also know-how. And nowadays, innovation is not just described as one effort towards commercialization. There is such a thing as social innovation. Anyway, on the right side of this slide, we do have the strategic investments to build the following R&D and innovation platforms over the long term. Next slide is what Fab is showing now. And unlike the NAST, which is an advisory and recognition body, okay, there are agencies, institutions in the country that can implement. We are now on the next slide, Feb, please. Next slide, please. That can implement innovation. And previous slide, please, Feb. Okay, the previous slide, where we have an enumeration of the NIC, the NRCP, the PASE, and then UP, where could you please move to the next slide after this, Feb? So here I would like to just show you that at NIC, we do have grants and competition, so we can implement innovations. But on my part, I wrote this policy insight now published in the CIDS Public Policy Journal. And it is again to go on my lifelong advocacy, which is to build a superstructure. There is no shortcut to this because we do have to retain and attract our S&T talent. And as basis for this, I had the PSA Open Stats as basis to show us where we need to improve our S&T expertise. Also have a proposal on diaspora workforce. And then, at the last meeting of the NIC in Malacanang, AI was the topic of most concern to the president. And I will just tell you a bit about that later. And with the NIC now, we have a great influence from the Private Sector Advisory Council. Feb, you have to move up to the second or the third slide. And there you have great influence of the PSAC, which would focus on workforce development. We have NRCP, PASE, and in collaboration with NAST, and finally the UP that we would like to tell you about. So now we are in National Innovation Council. You know about this a lot already. And we came up with the NIASD document. And this is, predated by PAGTANAW, so picked up a lot from the PAGTANAW Foresight document. And this is a 10-year foresight and implementation document. And now we do have the also the priority areas of development, identified 10 of them. And aside from the NIC movers, we have policy, infrastructure, programs, and financing that would be the innovation enablers in the country. And then we show the slide on entrepreneurship, and there is scientific exploration on the left side. And I say that we should give more emphasis to this as well as to engineering and design. Okay, so now I would like to reiterate what Professor Rod and Dr. Richard had emphasized. We have in the NIASD document, the NIASD core document, core targets. So yes, and here we have 174. This is in the NIASD document, and it is based on full-time equivalent researchers. Per million population is a low number from 2018, and there is a goal to increase this to 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 per million population. And tied up with it is the GERD, which is 0.32 of GDP in 2018, growing GDP, and we are supposed to increase it to 1.6 and to 1.8. Next slide, please. And then we have this old slide I have, which relates R&D directly with GDP. And now we would say innovation. And we are in the triangle, very, very low R&D investment, very low R&D, very low GDP, although it's growing. Next slide, please. So for policy, I have two proposals. One is for the innovation workforce through master's and PhD scholarships abroad and in the country, as well as a way to retain Filipino talent and engage Philippine diaspora. Next slide, please. So this is the policy insight that was published recently in the CIDS Public Policy Journal. And it is just a summary of what I have written in the longer version, and I have shared with the community a few times already. So you can access this. The slides can also be downloaded from the PASA website eventually. And the basis for this would be the open stats of the Philippine Statistics Authority for domestic, for environment and multi-domain statistics, demographic and social stats, and many other data. Now, in next slide, please. So in NIC, we have Innovation 10 Impact Pathways through the Huddle, Analyze, Build, and Innovate workshops that we conduct. And the next one will be on the infrastructure, and it is both virtual and real. So Philippine Innovation Spaces would be a centralized web portal that was launched in April 2025. But what it does is to connect innovators to various innovation facilities, services, and spaces nationwide. You can look at this in the NIC website. Next slide, please. In NIC, we do have financing, so we have funded 19 projects in 2022 and more in 23 and 24. And while most of them are still on capacity building, including those in the government agencies, the executive branch of government, now we are funding more from universities. For the private sector, there is no innovation grant available. There's only the competitions with awards. And here we have the Philippine Innovation Awards 2025. There will be the finals in October with 5 awardees of the year. Next slide, please, Feb. Philippine Innovation Awards. And in fact, we have this schedule. And we've done all the 4 regions, including the NCR. And next slide, please. We do have a lot of interest with this number of applications, registrations and applications. Next slide, please. And I attended 2 of them, the NCR. And you will see here that there's a lot that is digital economy related or AI related. AGAP, Edify, and CU Doc, with AGAP and CU Doc originating from UP and Edify from a woman who is a Yale graduate and is trying to do AI digital for OFWs and the service sector. Next slide, please. So in Luzon, there's again very interesting finalists held in Legazpi City. We have Rainfold for climate change related issues of rainfall and typhoons. Pili Seal, which is for agriculture, and Palaktak Palay Cedar. It's amazing how these groups can really do innovation using AI and also additive manufacturing, 3D printing. Next slide, please. So at the meeting of the NIC in March 2025, the president directed the DOST to take the lead in producing the national AI roadmap and framework. And in April, this was submitted to the president and approved by the president. And you will note that the strategy focuses on 5 key areas: infrastructure, workforce, innovation, data governance, and policy and AI deployment. So for the NRCP, many of us are members of the NRCP. There's more than 6,500 members here. And I think this is a major player. This is going to be a major player in research, development, and innovation in the country that is inclusive, because this includes all the SUCs and the private HEIs all over the country. Next slide, please. Yes. So we know that the NRCP mandates are based on an act that was passed in 1930s. It's the oldest organization in the country of science. And this now has great opportunities with the PASE because we have parallel divisions or RECs, and recently we signed an NRCP PASE MOA. So we have funding in NRCP, it's limited, but we are trying to increase it, and I would find a way for PASE members to participate. Next slide, please. So we are focused on the grants in aid, but there are many other programs now that would support mentoring and guidance of our early middle career investigators in NRCP. Next slide, please. So we do have our priorities, which would be the NIBRA, and this will be reviewed and revised, definitely to put in digital and AI. Engineer Tito Aliga pointed out fake news. That's very important. So we do have to address AI governance, but in UP, we're doing it right now. Next slide, please. So here we have the NIBRA, and you can see that it parallels PAGTANAW and PAASE. And I serve as a chair of the committee on networking, linkages, and resource generation. So in fact, I do interact with the Congress, the legislative staff, and looking forward to working closely with Professor Edna Ko. Next slide, please. So here are some of the NRCP JRA research flagship programs, and we intend to increase this. We are always saying, what are you doing on the ground? How are you implementing all of these NAST resolutions that we pass year in and year out? Without funding, we cannot do it. But in NRCP, to a certain extent, we can do something. And my own major concern is the Mindanao River Basin Flooding Program, which is really not just because of climate change, but because of mining activities where mountains are denuded and there is free fall from the mountains as far as Bukidnon and Agusan all the way to Davao. Next slide, please. So now let's look at PASA and NAST. And I would like to acknowledge Dr. Alvin Kulaba, both of NAST and PASA, who brought me to Leyte, the brainstorm that we held there, and we had a worksheet. And this is just to demo how we can really do S&T human capital development, analytics and decide how many we would invest for each priority area in each region of the country. See, there's just so many things that we have to address. Delivery and maintenance of basic services, as well as the S&T based progressive development requiring R&D and innovation. So in the case of PASA, we know that we have the ScienJ. That's very important. We know that we have to publish our results so that we can choose our S&T and I leaders who would be proven by their publications to have published good work and would lead. We have some NAST and PASA members who have led in innovation. One of them is Gobet Advincula, Additive Manufacturing Center, AMCEN, at the DOST. We have Jeneline Diaz and Nolly Veracruz with Michael Puruganan, now funded for over 150 million between DOST and DA for the 1,000 Rice Genome Project. We have the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines is going to be presented to the Senate for approval, but with major contributions from NAST and PASA's Vic Ilag and Homer Pantua. And we have, of course, the Balik Scientist Program, where you have people like Elmer Mojica serving as Balik scientists. And we recently signed the agreement with the DOST, and we are a DOST certified foundation. Next slide, please. This is my own contribution. So I'm retired, but I still try to do the research, and I patronize the Science Journal of the PASA. Here in UP, we do have priorities. I still serve as a special advisor for research and innovation to the president, but soon we will have a VPRI, and he will be in charge of the TTBDO, PGC, and the CIDS. And we are moving forward on a program called the SEND, which is a loan from the ADB. I am also involved in a nuclear energy program. And most important for this would be the AI that underlies, it's a cross-cutting technology that underlies all areas of national development sectors. And here we have in UP organized the OVP for digital transformation, leading AI programs and conferences. We held one in October. There will be another one in October at UP Cebu. And here we are always supported by the programs that Professor Rhodora and I, led when we were in Quezon Hall. And this is now going to be, moving again with a new VPAA in UP. I would like to focus on artificial intelligence, which is very, very important. I think it should have a major, section in PAGTANAW. 2050, because everywhere in the world, this is transforming the way we educate our youth. And in fact, there are those undergraduates who are now being recruited by big institutions, big organizations to do AI applications with governance and ethics. I point out Anthropic Incorporated, and we would like to think that we can do the same here in the Philippines. So in the end, we would say innovate, else evaporate, literally. Innovate, else fail, else perish, because we know that in climate change, we really feel the effects in the oceans, and the ocean waters evaporate, and then they come back to us as typhoons and cyclones and hurricanes. And that's a simplistic way of explaining our climate change. So for that, we do have smart agriculture in UP, and we have drone-based surveys and mapping of our SDG farm in UP in preparation for the ASEAN meeting in 2026. In UP, we do have Gawad Pangulo Innovation Awards. And again, we have models in UP for innovators. We have Joey Ocon and Joyce Ibana, who are PASA members as well. And we have, winners lately, and many of them are into AI, digital transformation, types of businesses. And we do have, finally, this Ascend program, which has an AI component, which has a semicon component, also has what you call pharma component. And with that, I think we need to contribute to upskilling our workforce. And this Ascend proposal, which is an ADB loan, has inputs from the PISA, which needs upskilled workforce. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I really appreciate Doc Giselle is, the experience, the exposure, the policy to governance, all that you have inside your content. And I would like to encourage everybody to really read that document, Building the Superstructure on Elevating Philippine Innovation to S&T and Human Capital, as well as looking into the NIC and the NIBRA, as Dr. Giselle has been discussing. We also have to take time to do that as scientists. So for what you're going to have now is our next speaker. He is a geoscientist with over 15 years of experience. Delivering actionable insights on water resources. He's a faculty of the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Georgia. Let's now welcome Dr. Jaime Evaristo for his
Hi, good evening. Can you all see me, hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. So let me just, first of all, let me time myself and stop at 7-8 minutes. All right, so thank you for the invitation to react to this section 1.6 of PAGTANAW 2050. Just a quick reflection, I realized about 25 years ago when it was 25 years ago when I graduated from UP, and I'm asked to reflect or comment on this document, which is about 25 years from now. By the time I'll be 69, so I'll have retired, so hopefully. But 25 years ago, I realized most of my professors really were educated in the US and elsewhere in UP. So I would like to group categorize my reaction into two. One is on education and capacity building, or knowledge generation, or capacity generation, if you want to be more avant-garde with what's acceptable these days. And the other is on the infrastructure and technological, and I have some minor comments as well. The reason why I opened with that statement that most of my professors, when I was studying in UP about 25 or so years ago, is because I realized they were from, let's say, a generation, if some of them graduated 1975 or mid-70s, and they were part of some sort of Marcos era, the father Marcos era, obviously, model of sending folks outside for training. And then there's another population that got their PhDs late 80s and early 90s, and most of them went to Japan. So my first comment or reaction to this section, this is regarding geographic features and natural resource endowments, obviously, but I would like to place this on top as a major comment, because I think the sustainability of achieving these strategies or the vision for the document really rests to a large degree on the having a sustainable pipeline of talent within the country. So I think it's important to emphasize repeatedly to train more professionals. So I'll try to stay in my lane as well. So professionals in hydrology, hydrogeology, GIS, or remote sensing, perhaps ecological economics and environmental law, and maybe to support also graduate studies in US, in Europe, and maybe Japan, and encourage those students to return to the Philippines and do their part or serve back in the Philippines and part of the knowledge economy. And also that's not achievable, or at least it's important to again emphasize the strength of our K-12. And it's quite sad the current state of the K-12 in the Philippines, but I just would like to put it out there that that's important. And so on the second part is on the technological infrastructure priorities. I'm a hydrologist myself, so I would like to make a major plug on water resources side. So I think it's a management dictum that goes that we cannot manage what we cannot measure or what we do not measure. So I would push for stream gauge networks in the Philippines and rainfall gauge networks that's similar to what's present in much of the developed world, particularly here in the US, and that these should be openly accessible and unrestricted data access, similar to what if you go to USGS website, you can look for a USGS gauge station and you can see data there almost in real time. And the reason why I'd like to emphasize that is because it's important to have our data. Of course, we need to build the infrastructure first and make sure that data is open for the rest of the world to use, because you'll never know what sort of knowledge can be generated by making that data open to the rest of the world. So I know of at least 5 PhD graduates from China who obtained their degrees, their PhDs, without having to step foot in the US, without having to analyze anything in China, just analyzing USGS data. So but of course, they're using that knowledge, the knowledge that they generated from their dissertations for whatever is applicable to pertinent applications within China. So I think it's important that we, at some point, hopefully within the next 25 years, have our own stream and rainfall gauge networks that are openly, the data from those are openly accessible to the rest of the world. I think AI is important, but it's not my lane, but I would just like to, again, bring us back to basics, that how important local data is, because what sort of AI what sort of data are those AIs gonna be trained on? I hope they're not data from outside or data from remote sensing. As useful as they are, they come with huge envelopes of uncertainty. So we really need data that are generated from the Philippines itself. I also would like to emphasize water quality. It's quite an unsung concept in this document. There's lots of mention on water quantity, but water quality is also needed. So it's not just the amount of water that's there, but how much of that is useful for people and for ecosystems. And the other also by way of water resources is early warning systems for droughts and floods. That's way down the line as soon as we have those infrastructure in place. And precision agriculture and water saving irrigation. Vietnam is really leading this, and I hope that the Philippines can also use that as a useful case study. And I find that geothermal, there's mention of it in the document, but it's quite unsung as well. it seems underrepresented in the document. So and we have quite a sizable amount of geothermal resource in the Philippines. So I thought I should just mention that also. I have several comments here, but in general, those are my two main comments. One on building the educational capacity and the knowledge pipeline particularly for grad studies, but to be able to make sure that we're sending students for graduate studies abroad of high quality. We need also to work on our K-12 system, the quality of our K-12 system. By way of governance, again, from a hydrology perspective, I was hoping that there's some sort of connections between this vision, the strategies that are outlined here, with specific governance reforms, for example, institutional coordination of water. I don't know what happened to those talks about Department of Water. Is that still a thing? Is that still alive? Or some decentralization of forest governance? Is there integrated coastal management water body? I'm not sure. And also maybe some river basin organizations, some integrated water resources management. These concepts are all almost nice to have in the literature, and it would be great if we had this also implemented, integrated into the local governance system in the LGUs all over the country. So I'll stop there, and because Dan I'm sure will be filling out in the blanks there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evaristo. Thank you also for emphasizing the need to actually come up and be more efficient in generating our local data that can be used by our local researchers and scientists, so that we can also contextualize the interventions that we are implementing on the ground. I think that's really needed to be emphasized, as well as in developing the manpower through building knowledge pipeline and reviewing the K-12 program. So there's a lot of interesting questions that probably our participants would like to ask now, but we will proceed, and thank you again for those insights. We'll proceed with our last reactor for today. So we will be hearing from Dr. Daniel Ibarra for his reaction and additional inputs. He is a Manning Assistant Professor of Earth, Environmental and Planetary Sciences, and Environment and Society, and also an Assistant Professor of Engineering at Brown University. So everyone, let us welcome Dr. Ibarra. Sir?
All right, thank you. I think that's a nice segue, and I'd like to thank the PAASE leadership for inviting me to react today on the PAGTANAW 2050 sort of section 1.6 and sort of the overall discussion today I'll kind of be reacting to. As a background, I'm a climate scientist. I work on the water cycle, similar to Dr. Evaristo, and I also work on critical minerals and the carbon cycle from sort of the Earth's and environmental science lens. I was a biological scientist in 2019, and I'm actively conducting research in the Philippines from several different angles, including recruiting Filipino students to my lab. And, I hope I can help with this sustainable pipeline that Dr. Evaristo was just discussing. And my group, in fact, uses a lot of the legacy stream gauge data and meteorological data sets that do exist for the Philippines, which actually for Southeast Asia is quite good comparatively. But as I'll sort of mention in terms of climate change resilience, I think that that's something that could be improved quite a lot. So yeah, I do want to sort of agree with the previous reactors that the document does a nice job outlining the natural resources that are available to tackle the big environmental challenges, including climate change, air pollution, and natural hazards. But before I go into sort of two specific things, I want to maybe provide a thought about the fact that sometimes combating climate change and developing sustainable energy solutions can sometimes be at odds with each other because we need to preserve the natural landscapes and ecosystems that we have, both the marine and the terrestrial, and the resources that we have in the country and globally. And so as someone who significantly cares about climate change and the environment, I'm always weighing these pros and cons, right? It can be very difficult to think about the strategies for reducing emissions, which of course involve things like geothermal or solar or wind power, but these may come at the expense of biodiversity and at the expense of our natural landscape. So thinking through how these trade-offs are important, thinking through how these trade-offs go and how we think about them as a society. And it's one reason why these sorts of documents, I think for scientists and engineers, it's really important for us to also engage with social scientists when creating these plans and documents such as PAGTANAW. And I think one example Dr. Concepcion already brought up is the sort of the Mindanao River Basin issues related to changes in the hydrology, but also related to the mining. Okay, so two things I wanted to sort of highlight from my reading of the section and the documents. One is sort of essentially similar to what Dr. Evaristo was saying, but for sort of all of environmental monitoring. And that environmental monitoring includes water quality, groundwater, river water, coastal waters. It includes, the monitoring of our hydrology, of our meteorology. And the good news is that a lot of this monitoring and the sensor networks are becoming much cheaper, and the Philippines is a relatively connected country in the grand scheme of things. And so, there's been really excellent work done that I saw at the recent PAASE meeting by Professor Lagme at UP Diliman related to natural hazards and flooding and sea level rise. And I think that ultimately a lot of that work is limited by the resources and the geographic scope in which it can cover, because there's a diversity of landscapes that the Philippines represents that need to be monitored. And so the S&T to develop these sensors, implement the wide network of these sensors will allow us to better understand how we can be resilient to climate change. And I totally agree that if we're going to use AI and we're going to use this sort of big data approaches to understand what the impacts of environmental and climatic changes are, we need to have really good high resolution, and that is both spatial and temporal resolution data. And it's really exciting to see a lot of the things that are happening that Dr. Concepcion talked about. Okay, and then the second is more related to the sort of the natural resources that exist in the country, and something that I didn't see too much in the PAGTANAW document. And I think that's probably because it's a general field that has really grown in just the last 4 or 5 years since the document was developed. And so what I'm sort of hinting at here is the rise essentially in carbon markets and this emerging sort of view of using different carbon dioxide removal strategies and technologies that have really taken off basically since COVID. Many of them have been around for much longer. We've understood the science, but really the engineers are doing this at scale at a lot of places in both developed countries as well as developing countries. And so these are examples of the examples of carbon dioxide removal technologies that I'm talking about. I just saw a stat today on LinkedIn, there's over 500 startups with significant sort of Silicon Valley investment in these various startups in this realm. And so these could be so-called nature-based solutions, things like afforestation and soil carbon enhancement, or engineered solutions such as enhanced weathering or ocean alkalinity enhancement. And I think that the Philippines is actually, because of its diversity of landscapes, diversity of geology, actually really well equipped to potentially benefit from these emerging that will come out of the carbon dioxide removal space. And so you can have co-benefits to agriculture through things like implementing enhanced weathering strategies. You can also potentially extract additional critical minerals from the rocks that are being used. And so the Philippines has the existing resources that are mentioned in the document, like nickel, copper, and gold. But there are other emerging critical minerals that we should also potentially incorporate into the next round of the document, because I think that would be an excellent way to think about additional industries that could spin off from that. Another example is ocean alkalinity enhancement. We're, of course, in a place that's in the tropics, and there's a lot of limestone, and likely ocean alkalinity enhancement is going to rely upon limestone deposits in some way or another. And there's the added co-benefit of fighting ocean acidification in coastal ecosystems using technologies that are being developed right now for ocean alkalinity enhancement. And then one that I know much less about, because I don't work in oil and gas at all, is sort of the potential to store CO2 in the subsurface in oil and gas reservoirs offshore. And these reservoirs are I know they are available in some areas around in the Philippine seas, but thinking about if that's a possible route that could be gone into with respect to CO2 capture, could be an interesting direction. And so I guess I'll stop there, but the main sort of 2 points I wanted to talk about were these sort of react to the climate change resilience piece and the big data and monitoring that we've heard about from other reactors, and also think about what ways these emerging markets related to carbon dioxide removal might help with fighting climate change, but also help with external investments that could spur exciting technological developments in the Philippines. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ibarra, for that. Thank you for reminding us that we belong to an archipelagic country where there's high diversity of landscapes and ecology. So we are very much well equipped to benefit from this a lot of range of potential nature-based solutions, and a lot of technologies and potentials there. I think it's an important aspect of our assets that really need to be further understood, emphasized, and developed. As you've mentioned, can also be part of the second version probably of PAGTANAW 2050. So this will allow us to maximize our resources and at the same time really help mitigate the effects of the changing climate. So thank you very much for that. So again, thank you to our reactors for the fruitful addition and your insights that have really added a lot more into the discussion. I think Mama Menchi, we're now getting to the more exciting part.
That is true. Actually, my interest would also be in the education part, as discussed by Dr. Abendan, and how we have to build the manpower that will bring us forward
True.
in all these. Plus, of course, climate change in the private sector, as well as the new opportunities Dr. Giselle has mentioned in terms of our systems to actually move
True.
this forward.
Yeah,
So
so
how do you
a lot to
begin?
digest there.
Oh, there's a lot. We have a first question from the chat. That's right. Tama ba,
Yes.
Deo? You can
Yes
read
po.
it.
So for those who actually have questions, you can use the button there to raise your hands, and we can call you in so that you can ask the question yourselves. Pero you can also send it through the chat box. We are also live in Facebook, so you can also type in your questions in the chat box or the comment box, and then our secretariat will provide them to us so that we can ask them to our panelists. So I think for the first question, it came from Facebook. So maraming salamat doon sa ating participants who are joining us from Facebook. So given that PAGTANAW 2050 is the Philippines National Foresight document, may we know how the Climate Change Commission, and probably also for those other panelists, how intend to concretely use it in carrying out its mandate, particularly in the formulation of the National Adaptation Plan and long-term climate policies. I think this has been partially discussed earlier, pero sirs and ma'am, if you actually have additional inputs here. So I think it's the pagtanaw to the NAP, and then how we can really concretely can have initiatives to mitigate climate change.
Can
Hi
I
there.
sorry,
Yeah, I
let
was
me
gonna
just
say,
give
ma'am, you
a
can
brief
start first.
comment on that. Okay, as I have mentioned, the PAGTANAW is being used as a guide for the different regional development councils' strategic plans. So therefore, it's not only at the government agencies' strategic planning where PAGTANAW 2050 is being used, but also in the different RRDC regional planning. So specifics are being considered. By the way, I thank the different reactors for their specific comments, and I took note of them. But I would like to mention that, like, how to call this, climate change and the other aspects are being discussed in the other sections of PAGTANAW 2050 and will be discussed more in detail in the succeeding reviews that we will make with PAASE. Thank you.
Others who would like to add to the discussion? I think there's been a lot of technologies mentioned earlier. Probably just to add on that, how can we make sure that these technologies or these ideas will really transform into initiatives and actions on the ground? And I think it's also related to the other point raised by the other panelists. How much of the roadmaps, how much of the ambitions that we have can really be translated into policy, and then the policy to action, because that's something that we also still need to bridge at this moment. Yeah.
Deo, can I weigh in?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Famous
Call me
mention.
Romel. I'm the only bureaucrat. If you notice your panel of reactors, I'm the only bureaucrat there, and I'm lumped with esteemed academicians, scientists, and practitioners. So
But
anyway,
very much needed,
I'll-
sir, by the way. The bureaucrats that we have is the one bridging everything from the knowledge to the action. So
yeah, well, because policy making is really what the Climate Change Commission's primary mandate is. Um, the Climate Change Commission acknowledges the serial connection between data, information, information to knowledge, and then this knowledge translated or established into policy, which is hopefully implemented properly so that it becomes best practice. With that, the CCC intends to use PAGTANAW as a planning reference to strengthen evidence-based policymaking. It's a rich source of references, information, leads, if you will, so that we can ensure that our national adaptation plan and our national determined contribution and other climate policies are all forward-looking, as it should be. Looks to the past, looks at the data from the past, what we gather, and and then that's where we'd like to emphasize also the importance of the integrity of the data that's being collected. I think one of the reactors had dwelled on that earlier on. And so that all our policies, they need to be forward-looking and therefore should be based on science. We as a policy institution, make sure also that our policies that we issue are all science-based or evidence-based and aligned with long-term sustainable development pathways. In concrete manners, off the cuff, we can use foresight scenarios to anticipate climate risks and opportunities, or integrate projections into the National Adaptation Plan or its iterations later on to guide sectoral adaptation priorities. For the NDC mitigation strategies, we can align them with long-term low-carbon pathways. And all these the science and forward-looking evidence can certainly inform climate policy development. And all these, we need to be able to integrate these, coordinate, and collaborate with all sectors of society, the academia, civil society, private sector, and the whole of government. All these must be, put together and made coherent and strengthen the coherence, into national policies which has sustainable development and resilience as goals, really. Thank you.
Let's call on Dr. Giselle and the large level of experience for implementation.
Thank you, Menchi. Just 2 points. First is in regard to the archipelagic thrust of PAGTANAW. This was presented to the UP officials some time back. And now there's a flagship program of the UP president on archipelagic and ocean virtual university. And the lead person here is Professor Rhodora Azanza. So Rod, it's really time to push this.
Yeah. May I
Yes.
say something? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I am co-chairing the implementation committee for the archipelagic and ocean virtual university of the UP system. And we are now in the process that the other co-chair persons are Jay Batumbakal and now executive secretary, I forgot his name. Now, but it will be under the Office of the Vice President for Academic Affairs. We are now in the process of coming up with the names of faculty members who can act as faculty, full-time faculty or adjunct faculty. And then we have already the potential how they call this curricula. And then we will be filming the different sections for the different parts of the curriculum.
Thank you, Rod. I
Many
think
rules. Yeah.
we should use MSI as our base.
Yeah, of
And then
course.
consult UPV,
Yeah.
UP
The main base is
LB.
yes. the main source of for the marine aspects.
Yes, we
would
have to
be
move now.
MSI and UPB, of course, and
Yeah.
the other
But of course, it's
universities.
reached to reef, so it's holistic.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, it is.
Yes. Anyway,
Yeah,
my
and-
second point is related to what Dr. Ibarra mentioned, and of course also related to the concern about remote sensing data and our data being our own. So let me say, Dr. Ibarra, that in UP we are trying to integrate AI, studies, AI into the domains of chemistry, physics, biology, environmental science, where we generate our own data, but we must also be open to the data that is generated, say, in the ASEAN, where we have data relevant to our own and the rest of the world. Now, let me tell you a bit about this drone company, where you actually have a drone assembly being done in UP for applications in agriculture, UPLB, rice and banana, and also for surveying and for SDG, the SDG part that we have in UP Diliman. And the point there is that the assembly and the brain of the drones, they will be programmed in UP because we do not want the foreign sources of the parts to integrate, to have control over our robots, right? The other one is that I think, the incoming VTRI, he pointed out that there is data from, one of the major countries, mainland China. And, it originates from fellow scientists there. And it does not include the West Philippine Sea. This is, to me, a demonstration of why it is important for academics to be collaborating with one another, because we are the mainstays. We provide the continuity, and we, the new generation of academic leaders and scholars, they would be the advisors of the political leaders of our countries. So this is what I'm talking about for a long time now. It's about academic and scientific diplomacy, and us trying to collaborate with foreign counterparts so that we can provide this advice over the long term. Thank you.
I was
May I give
thinking
a brief comment on that? May I give a brief comment on that? Okay, she mentioned science diplomacy. It's part of the roadmap in the PAGTANAW 2050. It's one of the enablers. And in fact, I regularly give lectures for the Department of Foreign Affairs, considering the archipelagic and maritime nature of our country. And we also have these ASEAN members, at least once a year with the ASEAN. So science diplomacy is being undertaken, has been started by Department of Foreign foreign affairs. And the NAST is also pushing for science diplomacy. I think even Carmen and Deo are advocates of science diplomacy to be able to help us in our advocacy for the use of the term Philippine, the waters that we have as a territorial waters. Thank you.
So quickly, Richard, just on the same question, how do you think this PAGTANAW document can be absorbed at the application level? You think?
Dr. Azanza mentioned about the regional development councils. I think it's everybody here is part of DOST or the other government agencies, the PAASE members. You just have to keep pushing the agenda. Like, hey, this is what you see in PAGTANAW. In your work, where can you integrate it? I'll give an example. Just Dr. Sel mentioned about the Ascend loan program. We're trying to find valuations about investments in R&D and human capital development. PAGTANAW is one sort of evidence for that. However, we still need sort of the actual economic data, right? And so I think first, it's really just wherever you can find opportunities, we have to bring, reference to PAGTANAW. At the same time, we also have to show, in a way, the indicator discussion. Short term, what can we show to give value already to government efforts and investments? Because at the end of the day, we cannot avoid the sort of short term thinking. But how can we actually extract sort of getting what you want out of the long term goals, out of sort of short term targets? That's something I think we all have in our own way, in our own professions, have to build into our work. Even if you're just if you're doing research in a university, how can you start integrating these targets to your work? Even though the USA won't ask you these sort of long-term indicators or outcomes from your work, from your research, how can you start sort of building that longer-term goal? I know it's not easy, but in a way, it's a piecemeal approach. But it's a bold vision, right? It's not going to be mandated with one single policy or effort.
Probably I have a related question to that. We've been talking about science-informed policy, data collection, contextualized solutions, and all of those, but this will not be possible without the scientists and the manpower that we have. And many of our panelists, Dr. Ibarra and Dr. Evaristo, have been doing their best to also train other scientists abroad and then send them back home. But also discussed earlier is that if we're going to be gauged with the classic indicators that we have, we might not actually fare well. So the first question probably is that, are we really just underperforming? That's why we're not faring well? Or do the indicators that we have right now do not apply to the context of the ST&I in the Philippines? And along those lines is, after training, I'm also a balik scientist, so very much thankful to the UST. But the challenge also is that after training these experts, are there opportunities waiting for them to come back when they get back home? Are there opportunities for employment? Is that environment actually competitive enough? Questions that many of young scientists like me who also wanted to come back probably are asking right now. Dr. Edna, who's raised her hand, can chime in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deo. It's a very difficult and challenging actually a point that we are in, considering we are looking at PAGTANAW 2050, no? That's many years from now, till many years from now. But I would like to think the way that government and politics probably design, because actually, although we can have a strategic long-term goal, we can only draw in broad strokes the direction. But come to the implementation part, I think we have to work and recognize that it is by administration, by leadership, by time frame that we have to measure some outcomes and results. So while we have a broad stroke for 2050 until 2050, it possibly makes sense to also break this down into series without saying we cannot not do something from another sector, but I'm saying we should be realistic in laying down what is doable. And I think I heard from Richard Abendan that the outcome indicators would be quite important if we think of the next 6 years, the second 6 years, and so on, right? Because otherwise we're flooded and we're drowned by the dreams and what we want to achieve, but not really knowing where and how to begin, which place, because of the variety of the territories that Philippines has. We cannot compare ourselves with Singapore. No way. No way. So different. We cannot be envious of Singapore or probably of Malaysia. We have to draw our own scheme based on what we are, what are the limitations, including the political psychology and the mindset of people and communities. And which is why I find governance important, because it's not just the science, it's also the society part. And these are the big challenges in the Philippines. We're bright, we have the assets, we have the natural resources. But why is it that we are where we are? It's because of the society, the sociological dynamics, and all that. So I think we have to put it in a broad frame, but cut it up into terms like what's doable for the next 6 years. Hopefully, there's no constitutional change. Next 6 years, the second next 6 years, and so on, but with adaptability to circumstances and situation. Climate change has never been so striking as it is now, and I think we have to put it at the center, in addition to adopting technology in agriculture, in fisheries, and so on. I think I'd like to stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, I see another hand up. I hope you're going to make a contribution along these lines, Al, Serafika. Seeing that this is the condition and the indicators versus are we really performing? What are our options?
Thank you, Manjit. Thanks for all of the contributions of the reactors. And again, I'm been part of both the NAST formulation of PAGTANAW as well as I'm part of PAASE over the last
Oh, you're breaking up, Al.
decade, I would say. Operationalize PAGTANAW. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm on the road.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I think Edna touched it very well, that we need to be able to have the connection with the current environment. I mean, the DOST 4 pillars and the Ambition 2040, the way it's been described. But at the bottom of every aspect of PAGTANAW, we need to have the right people. And to me, that's what I've been advocating. It doesn't only include academia and government, but also industry. That's why there's a section for business and trade in the operational part of PAGTANAW. But definitely having more people engaged, especially entrepreneurs, trying to be able to operationalize the ambition of PAGTANAW. I'll take one very simple case. We always say archipelagic, that there's a blue economy that's worth $160 billion come 2050. How do we get there? And what is it now? What is it in 6 years, with given the policies that we have, given the support, given the business aspects? And then how do we get to the $150 billion of valuations for blue economy? So to me, that's one aspect of PAGTANAW where it's so big that it's very difficult to put your arms around it. But what I see is being able to be a part of each of the sectors that you think you can be contributory, may it be entrepreneurship, as in my case, may it be in business and trading, and maybe in technology transfer and business development. But pick your spot and contribute the way Edna's contributing from the governance side. Definitely, Giselle has been very active in the NIC as well as NRCP. for me, I mean, both Deo and I are part of the Balik Scientists. I've been looking for exactly what the 500 or 600 strong Balik Scientists now can contribute to PAGTANAW. And I think eventually we will be able to populate each of the operational areas as well as the pillars of PAGTANAW with the right people, both locally and abroad, especially with PAASE, and have real clear-cut pathways, because at the end, it's really a roadmap we're trying to build between 25 years. And how do we get to the proper signpost, let alone build the road to get there? So I think it's a huge task, but I'm very encouraged with what I've heard today. I mean, these are all coming from all different aspects and all different geographies. So I think I'll stop there. All I'm saying is please be counted, be part of the interface between NAST and PAASE, and very specific, how do we operationalize the PAGTANAW 2050 by mapping out the next 25 years contribution of the scientists and engineers in this ecosystem. Thank you.
So maybe what I can do is, we have one hand from Ma'am Giselle. Can everybody just give a 1-minute closing? So that Ma'am Giselle, 1 minute, Sir Evaristo, Dr. Abendan, Dr. Ibarra, Dr. Cuenca can actually, and Ma'am Rod for sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
So 1 minute. So first, to reply to Al, there's a seaweeds industry, okay, major export of our country, that is marine and aquatic. So in NRCP, we are finally approving and funding the project of Michael Roleda of MSI, who is a seaweed expert. He just hosted the phycology conference recently. He has an H index of 50 and he has 7,000 citations. And yet there was a delay in the funding of his project or its approval by people who have much lower or perhaps no H indices. So this is my example of how expertise is needed, to drive innovation and entrepreneurship. Without that track record and peer review by your expert scientists all over the world and in the Philippines, how can you assure that the innovation is high quality and sustainable over the long term? And that is why it's so important to increase the number of PhDs in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Attorney Cuenca.
Oh, thank you. Very quickly, we just, for and in behalf of the Climate Change Commission, we'd like to thank the PAASE and NAST for, again, making us part of the conversation this morning. Let me just say that we in government, we the policymakers side of the equation, when NAST or PAASE shoots us an invitation, even though we don't really feel we're going to be able to contribute much in terms of technical aspects, we're here at least to listen to you, what your concerns are, so that we can, react, so to speak, in the positive way, through our policies, through urging, and again, in the mandate of the CCC, it's a coordinative a mandate we have among government agencies. We can also help and support where it was pointed out earlier, start with education, start with K-12, developing the scientists so that we can do better in innovation, catch up with our neighbors, and do better even than our neighbors. Because innately, Filipinos have the talent, the brains for all of these, and I don't see why we should be lagging in terms of the metrics. Thank you very much.
Dr. Abendan, 1 minute. Oh, he's not in yet. Dr. Ibarra and Dr. Evaristo.
Sure. Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for this nice conversation. It's really quite interesting from my perspective, and I love this idea of using the Balik Scientist alumni as and another group that can engage with this document and many other documents that will help support these efforts. And personally, from my perspective, I'm happy to collaborate in any way possible. And I love, speaking of like the technical things, I love getting into the technical nitty gritty, but I also am very interested in the discussing the policy and the pipeline issues that we've been discussing here at the end. So thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Abendan?
Yes, quickly, I just answered Leo's question first. I think there's a portion of PAGTANAW that talks about return of investment, human capital, and it talks about increasing pay and all that, and rewarding our scientists. Everybody, I'm sure in this room will go for that. It's there, but how do we get there is the big question mark. And so my last statement is again from the indicator science. I was asked to talk about that. Indicators have to be clear, accurate, measurable, but ultimately actionable. So if these indicators if we cannot influence them or they don't drive us to do actions, then what are they there for, right? And so I'll leave it there that if somehow we can get better data on like impact and outcomes of innovation, and that's the hardest thing to do because they're all outcomes in long term, that will help a lot in terms of the investment will come back and in the short term perspective, increase funding. So that's just my last statement in terms of innovation and how the context of longer term goals in PAGTANAW can permeate in the short term. Thank you.
Dr. Evaristo?
Yeah, thank you so much for these conversations. It's really enlightening to me. I think I'm getting much more than I have given here. Yeah, I think the point on the manpower or the human side is stressed enough. We're trying to do what we can from outside the Philippines. Dan has a PhD student from, I guess, Diliman. I just have one that started recently. She's from Los Baños. But these are kind of, isolated, let's say, even if there's growing number of us from outside the Philippines. I was wondering if there was a way to have some of these initiatives and strategies or visions codified in the law so that it's not bound to any 6-year term of any president or whatever. It was the China has a very good model for this. When I was in the Netherlands, I hosted 2 Chinese students. I did not spend a euro on any of them. They're fully funded by the Chinese government. And that's not because, they don't have they only have one party there, but that's because there's the backing of the government. And hosts from outside from the West are almost always very willing and welcoming. And of course, it's a funding source. I was wondering along that line if there's a lobby of some sort, the PAASE, the NAST, how can we or these organizations contribute to lobby some law to codify these knowledge expert training and the exchanges. And also vice versa. It's not just for our locals in the Philippines learning from outside, but it's also the other way around. That's why the Balik Scientist is really, I think, a useful, best, what do you call that, success story to leverage moving forward. That's all from me. And if there are any opportunities for collaboration, I'm more than happy. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Before we flash the certificate, let's hear from Dr. Azanza.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this has been very productive. And as what we have said, the foresight is collaborative. It should be dynamic. It should not be a dead document. That's why we have this review. And thank you, PAASE, for this opportunity to meet with the experts who gave their opinion. And we are counting on you in the review and final writing of this version. Malaysia does this almost yearly, and Korea also does this regularly. And then regarding codification of PAGTANAW 2050, we are actually thinking about this, and we will be discussing this with our legislators, just like what Korea has done. They have legislated their foresight. As what Edna Ko has said, this is a broad stroke foresight, a plan, a guide for the next 30 years. Encompassing different presidential periods, and that's the reason why the specific should be based on the different concerns in indicators, key indicators, and therefore the different agencies should be the ones giving the specifications. I mean, should be the case together with business sector. And so therefore, by the way, we are starting to give specific indicators to help in the next round of the review so that we can help those in the next round of their planning to have this guide coming from PAGTANAW 2050. Again, maraming salamat from our experts, including the comments from our audience like Edna ko. Edna, we would like to have your participation in the social section, social aspect section. By the way, the main writers there were Mahar Mahas and Secretary Balisacan.
Rod, I have my assignment already from PAASE. I will present sometime, one of these days.
Sige, kasama ka na dun. Konti lang yun, section, that section.
Thank you, ma'am.
The others, thank you very much for volunteering. And I noticed also that the CCC has already made use of PAGTANAW 2050 in their planning. In fact, other agencies have already made specific plans using PAGTANAW 2050 as a guideline. Maraming salamat sa inyo.
Yeah, ma'am, time is of the essence also. So on behalf of the Philippine American Academy for Science Engineering, we would like to thank all the speakers and what do you call this, our experts today for giving your time and your contributions to the discussion. They will read the artist certificate, tapos call na ma'am na din. Oop, you're muted, sir.
Thank you for that. So this certificate of appreciation is presented to our speakers and panelists today for their contribution at the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering in partnership with the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines during the first of a special 4-part fireside chat series on PAGTANAW 2050, the Philippine Foresight on Science, Technology, and Innovation held on August 29, 2025, presented today to August 29, 2025. Signed by Dr. Gladys Cherise Completo, PAASE President, and Vice President Maria Margaret Peña. So this certificate is being awarded to Academician Rhodora v. Azanza.
It will also be given to the other members of the panel.
Yes. Attorney Romel Antonio O. Cuenca.
Dr. Javime Evaristo.
Dr. Richard Abendan, Dr. Gisela Concepcion.
And
Dr. Ibarra, of course. Maraming salamat po. So, indeed, Ma'am Menchi, we are walking away today, hopefully more inspired, more motivated to actually do more for the Philippines and contribute more until we reach and realize the goals of the PAGTANAW 2050. So to formally conclude the session, may we call on Ms. Luningning Samarita Domingo, Director 4 of the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines, to deliver the closing remarks. Ma'am?
Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. On behalf of the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines, I would like to sincerely thank everyone for participating in this special fireside chat series on the theme PAGTANAW 2050, the Philippine Foresight on Science, Technology, and Innovations. This series serves as a meaningful platform to engage the members and esteemed partners of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE, in the external review of the PAGTANAW 2050 documents. As we prepare to update this ST&I Foresight document, your insights, reflections, and critical recommendations are invaluable. They will guide us in refining the document to ensure it remains responsive to both current and emerging global and national challenges. Let me extend our deepest appreciation to Dr. Gladys Cherise Completo, President of PAASE, for graciously accepting our invitation to partner us on this initiative. We are also grateful to all our resource speakers, reactors, and moderators whose expertise and thoughtful engagement
have enriched each session. Maraming salamat po for your time, commitment, and generosity in sharing your knowledge. We look forward to furthering this collaboration as we continue to build a forward-looking, inclusive, and evidence-based roadmap for science, technology, and innovation in the county. Muli, maraming salamat sa lahat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Luningning. And with that, we officially close the first session of PAASE Fireside Chat series with a focus on the sections of PAGTANAW 2050, the Philippine Foresight on Science, Technology, and Innovation.
We've been given a lot of insights and assignments actually to read as well, to learn more about this, to contribute. So on behalf of the PAASE and our partner agency, the National Academy of Science and Technology, we extend our sincerest gratitude to everyone for the active participation, value-adding dialogue, and commitment to foresight-driven future. By the way, we look forward to meeting you in the following sessions, September 12, September 19, for 12 and 19 to dig further into the remaining sections of the PAGTANAW document.
So we're excited to see you in the next sessions of PAGTANAW 2050 Fireside Discussions. And because we're Asians and we're Filipinos, we would like to actually request everyone to turn on their cameras for a photo opportunity. So may we also request the secretariats to guide us. Yes.
By the way, this is being recorded. So as in the effort to really disseminate this further into other people, let us take the recordings and bring them to where we can actually bring them and gather comments and give them to Ma'am Rod and everybody else.
Okay. Are we ready, Secretariat?
Ako
Hello
po.
po. So I'll be
Thank you also to both of you for being very wonderful moderators. Great job, guys.
Thank
You
you.
kept it going.
Page
Deo,
1 po. Page 1 po.
Deo and Menchie,
Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to recognize the presence of Academician Willie Padolina. He
Hi,
was
sir.
here earlier, and he had a major role in PAGTANAW 2050 together with then President NAST President Rod. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padalina.
Dr. Perdelina.
Okay. We're done.
Are we done?
for page
I think we're done.
1,
Page
2, 3,
1.
smile.
Okay. Page 2. 1,
For
2,
page 2 po, 1, 2, 3, smile. And then okay na po.
okay, maraming salamat.
Maraming
Thank you
salamat.
everyone for coming. Yeah.
Again, I'm Deo Onda, and together
Menchie
with
naman po.
maraming salamat. We've been your moderators. Have a good day, everyone. Maraming
you.
salamat. Thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Menchie.
Salamat, Doc Deo. Anytime.